I hope you're happy, I muttered to myself, staring down a scorch mark near the emergency exit, still visible even after the third buffing. That stain was from 3 years ago, when some genius in procurement ordered industrial sealant with a flash point just slightly above lukewarm bathwater. No one got hurt, because I caught it in time. Because I always caught it in time. 15 years of walking that fine line between paranoia and prevention. The only thank you I ever got was a Christmas mug that said safety is sexy. The handle broke off. Fitting. I was halfway through a checklist for the upcoming chemical waste disposal audit when the new CEO glided in like he owned the air. Chadwick Trenton Roman 3, or C3 as the sycophants whispered. Fresh from some tech startup where the only danger was a paper cut from stock option contracts, wore Italian loafers to a floor that still reeked of ammonia and rust, spoke in phrases like synergizing potentialities and low-hanging ROI fruit. The guy had the emotional range of a screensaver and the attention span of a TikTok hamster. First week, he called me into the boardroom and opened with, "Tell me what you do," but in less than 30 seconds and in a way that aligns with value-forward optics. I told him I keep people alive, then asked if he wanted that in a pie chart. He didn't laugh. Instead, he nodded like I was a stubborn Roomba that refused to map a hallway. Still, I kept my head down, did my job, ran every drill, logged every inspection, revised the lockout-tagout protocol when the new forklifts arrived. No one noticed. No one ever notices when things don't go wrong. But let a single person twist an ankle on a puddle near Tank 14. Suddenly, I'm Satan in a high-vis vest. A week before things went south, I signed off on the quarterly insurance renewal. Boring paperwork nobody but me ever touched. It had all the usual legalese and liability jargon. As I initialed the final page, I mumbled, mostly to the ficus in the corner, "I'm the only one who ever bothers to read these policies." That ficus and I had been through some things. Still alive, unlike half the interns from finance. Hey, if you've made it this far, and you're one of the 95% of folks who listen to these stories, but haven't hit that little subscribe button, consider being part of the first 10,000 to do it. It'd mean the world, especially since I'm pretty sure even the ficus is subscribed by now. Anyway, at first, Chadwick didn't touch safety. I think he assumed it was just a compliance checkbox. But then came the cuts. Not clean scalpel cuts. These were blindfolded chainsaw swings. He canceled ergonomic reviews, shelved spill response training, and told the janitorial crew to just wing it on chemical storage because mop water is mop water. The final straw. He hosted an all-hands meeting where he used my full name, middle included, to announce a cost-efficiency pivot. Called my protocols hypervigilant bureaucracy, and joked that my evacuation drills had more choreography than a Taylor Swift concert. Laughter followed, mostly from the kind of middle managers who still say cray cray unironically. I didn't flinch. I didn't yell. I just stood there in the back, clipboard in hand, face frozen into that calm expression you learn when you've been patronized for decades. But I noted every word, every chuckle, every name tag. That night, I walked past my old file cabinet. It's a 400-pound tank of a thing. Takes a special key only I have. Inside, copies of every incident report, every complaint ever filed and ignored, and one very peculiar clause I made sure slipped into the last insurance overhaul. You know, just in case someone ever got the bright idea to fire the only person who knew where the real landmines were buried. I didn't think he'd be stupid enough to try. Chadwick had a gift for surprising even my lowest expectations. 2 weeks after Chadwick's little comedy roast at my expense, the emails started rolling in. Subject lines like face-out proposal ergonomics program and low-impact spill drill budget. Every one of them read like a slow-motion lobotomy for the company's safety brain. It was death by optimization spreadsheet. If something didn't come with a KPI or a profit ratio, was treated like cancer. They got rid of the monthly eyewash station checks, reassigned the warehouse floor safety officers to general logistics, cut the evacuation drill schedule from quarterly to annual unless incident requires. Because apparently, in Chadwick's world, fire only shows up once a year, usually after Q4. I tried reasoning with him. I printed out the OSHA violation thresholds, highlighted the penalty numbers in neon pink, handed him a folder labeled "Just trying to keep you out of prison." He tossed it on his credenza like it was junk mail. Linda, he said one afternoon, legs crossed like a smug flamingo, we're not a prison risk. We're a thought leader. People don't sue thought leaders. I stared at him, then at the spill response schedule he had just signed off on canceling. Tell that to hydrochloric acid. The boardroom meeting was where it all blew up. It was supposed to be routine, orderly operations sync. Chadwick strutted in like he was auditioning for TED Talk, AirPods still in, coffee in a cup so white and minimalist it looked like it came with a cult membership. He clicked his little remote, slides rolling behind him. Efficiency equals impact. Trim the fat, not the future. Buzzword bingo. Then my slide popped up. A red heat map of incidents prevented, costs saved, and risk mitigated. A decade's worth of data. It even kept the color scheme from the old branding, out of respect for the company's legacy. Big mistake. Linda, he said, this is great. Really, nostalgic, but we're evolving. This kind of risk paranoia, it's not scalable. The room chuckled. I didn't. I stood and pointed to the red zones on the chart. This paranoia kept us from making national news 5 times over. It's what keeps your premiums below 6 figures. He smiled, that vacant, yogurt commercial smile. New insurance policy is fine. Legal skimmed it. I leaned in. I wrote that policy, and I'm the only one who's ever read the compliance clause. Linda, he sighed, that's just fine print. You're being dramatic. I stared at him, counted 3 seconds, then said quietly, if you strip compliance, the policy voids. Page 19, subsection F. I highlighted it for your lawyer. He didn't even blink. If we get sued, we'll pivot. PR is cheaper than prevention. Sat down, jaw clenched so tight my molars ached. My hands were steady, but inside it felt like something had split open. Not grief, something colder, mechanical. The sound a gear makes when it snaps and doesn't stop spinning. Rage, but with spreadsheets. As the meeting ended, I packed my files silently. No one looked at me. Not even Diane from HR, who once cried during a safety drill because she forgot her heels wouldn't pass the evacuation zone gravel. Back in my office, I took one last look at the wall where I kept every team photo from every year. Faces I'd helped keep safe. People who didn't even know how close they'd come to disaster more times than I could count. Then I sat down, reopened the insurance PDF, and reread subsection F. Just to make sure. It happened on a Tuesday. Tuesdays are the coward's Friday, perfect day to gut someone and still leave the office early for golf. It was mid-sip of burnt breakroom coffee when Diane from HR waddled in with that strained smile people wear when they're about to shoot your dog and say it's for your own good. She didn't even sit. Just handed me a folder, corporate beige, and said, effective immediately, your role has been made redundant as part of broader restructuring and cost alignment. Redundant, I echoed like it was a foreign word. Diane nodded like a bobblehead on lithium. It's not personal, Linda. You've been here a long time. Things are just shifting like tectonic plates right before a city swallows itself whole. I flipped open the folder. It was boilerplate nonsense. Severance paragraph, NDA clause. The kind of paperwork meant to feel official but hollow as a dollar store trophy. He didn't even have the balls to do it himself, I asked. Diane blinked. Mr. Trenton is unavailable today. Of course he was, probably off visioneering a new office ping-pong table while OSHA violations stacked up like Jenga blocks. I kept my face neutral, took the folder. Guess I better start packing. No need, she said quickly. Your badge was deactivated this morning. It's already boxed your desk. The humiliation burned hotter than any acid spill I'd ever scrubbed up. 15 years, reduced to a cardboard box I didn't even get to fill myself. I stood, slow and stiff, like my dignity was trying to hold itself together one vertebra at a time. They walked me past the floor like a criminal. No eye contact, no goodbyes. Even Rob from maintenance, who once cried in my office over his kids' hospital bills, looked down at his boots. But when we reached my office, I paused. The file cabinet was still there. 400 pounds of steel and secrets, locked tight. And the key? On the chain around my neck, tucked behind my ID badge they hadn't even bothered to collect yet. Diane fidgeted beside me. We'll have someone from facilities. I'll handle it, I said, voice calm, surgical. I unlocked the top drawer, slid one folder into the bottom of my tote bag, smooth and unnoticed. It was the master copy of the insurance policy. Annotated. The kind of notes only I understood because I wrote them by hand. Beside it, I left a sticky note. Reactivation requires signature. Each 19. Then I stood there just for a second longer. Let my eyes trace every corner of the space where I'd built systems, prevented disasters, shielded fools from their own hubris. The air smelled different, emptier, like it already knew. As I walked out, I didn't cry, didn't flinch, just muttered under my breath, "Let's see what happens without me," and walked into the world like a loaded weapon with the safety off. The first week was a blur of stiff coffee, job boards, pretending I wasn't checking the company's press releases every morning like a bitter ex stalking Facebook wedding albums. I wasn't looking for revenge. Not yet. I was looking for validation. For proof that somewhere in the cold machinery of corporate America, someone still gave a damn about experience, foresight, and the ability to read a material safety data sheet without Googling what a corrosive agent was. But the openings I found, all fluff, is consultants who never wore steel toes. Safety advisors for startups that thought compliance meant posting a fire extinguisher emoji on Slack. One recruiter even asked if I had TikTok leadership skills. I nearly threw my mug at the wall. Meanwhile, the company I'd bled for was thriving, at least on paper. Their homepage now featured a grinning Chadwick Trenton Roman III, arms folded like a toothpaste model for narcissism. Headlines screamed bold cuts, big gains, and legacy systems streamlined for growth. They axed half the warehouse staff, outsourced janitorial to a third-party crew with a 2.3-star Yelp average, and paused all capital upgrades pending quarterly reassessment. In English, duct tape and denial. And then they announced it, a new facility in Ridgeway. 60,000 square feet of concrete dreams and cheap metal siding. State-of-the-art operations, they called it, even though it was a refurbished textile mill built before OSHA even existed. The press ate it up. Forbes did a fluff piece. Chadwick tweeted something like, "Legacy is comfort. We chose courage." I almost bit my tongue off reading it. But the real kick came on a rainy Thursday, 3 weeks post-termination. I was in line at the post office, returning a broken steam mop I hadn't asked for. My phone buzzed with a message from a number I hadn't seen in months. Danielle, logistics supervisor. They cut the maintenance budget for the old boiler. You warned them about that. I stared at the screen. The old boiler. Unit B7, nicknamed the Widowmaker because it was so old, it had its own folklore. I'd filed 4 separate reports recommending phased replacement. Each time, I got a budget pending stamp. The last time I checked, ran at 87% pressure and had a temper worse than a raccoon in a meat grinder. I texted back when Danielle replied, effective last week. Reassigned the guy who babysat it. Chad says it's running clean. I didn't reply. Just sat in my car for 15 minutes while rain tapped the windshield like a metronome for rage. Because it wasn't just stupid, it was criminal. That boiler wasn't running clean. It was running out of time. And I realized right then, Chadwick hadn't just erased me. He'd erased everything I knew. And soon enough, he'd learned that knowledge has a half-life. And mine was just about ready to detonate. The first headline came to me through a Google alert I forgot I'd set up during my final week at the company. I was microwaving leftover lo mein and half-watching reruns of Columbo when my phone vibrated on the counter. Breaking. Small explosion at Danvers facility injures 3. Didn't even finish chewing. The noodles slid down like a brick. It was them. I clicked into the article, heart hammering. A minor explosion in the main warehouse. 3 hospitalized, burns, some smoke inhalation. Fire contained quickly, no fatalities. But that wasn't the part that froze me. It was the photo. A mangled panel of twisted metal, blackened with soot. In the background, clear as daylight, was the shape of the B7 boiler unit. The Widowmaker. I dropped the fork. It clanged against the sink like a starting bell. The next few hours were a fog of flipping through local news, OSHA updates, employee Reddit threads, and leaked texts. I had to see it all, had to understand. Every detail was a punch. Emergency protocols were delayed. No one had rehearsed the new exits. The fire extinguishers hadn't been inspected in months. One guy passed out trying to pry open a jammed bay door. And me? I just sat there, sweaty palms pressed to my temples, trying not to scream. Because I'd warned them, documented it, signed my name to 4 incident predictions. Highlighted pressure anomalies, drew arrows, attached vendor quotes. It was all in the files. And yet there it was. Smoke, sirens, stretchers, and me, watching it all from my kitchen table, powerless as hell. For the first time since they kicked me out, I felt responsible. Like a lifeguard who walked off duty and then heard the splash. They made the decisions, yes. But I'd kept silent. I'd walked away. Maybe I thought they'd keep the bare minimum in place. Maybe I just wanted to believe someone would step up when I stepped out. They didn't. And then came the press conference. Chadwick, in front of a blue backdrop with the company logo half-cropped out of frame. No tie, rolled sleeves. The usual snake oil charm. He opened with, "Our hearts are with the injured employees and their families," then pivoted straight into defense mode. These legacy policies were outdated. Safety isn't just about tradition, it's about innovation. We're reviewing old structures to ensure a modern, responsive approach. Translation: this is someone else's fault, and we're doing yoga about it. He name-dropped AI-driven hazard tracking and reactive architecture protocols. That meant a damn thing to the guy who nearly lost his arm because a pressure gauge hadn't been calibrated since 2012. But buried in the third article I read that day, wedged between a quote from a local union rep and a fire department report, was a line that stopped me cold. According to sources close to the investigation, the company's insurance claim has encountered an unexpected administrative complication, delaying payout. There it was. The policy. My policy? The one with my name on every page that mattered. The one that required my signature to unlock coverage for any accident tied to operational negligence. Suddenly, my silence wasn't just absence. It was power. And I realized, as Chadwick stood there feigning concern, that he hadn't just buried me. He'd buried himself, too, under a clause he never bothered to read. Email arrived under the subject line. Policy 184 to 9B 775. Countersignature required urgent. It was from the legal department of Halworth and Hale Insurance Group. I almost deleted it. Figured it was a mistake, maybe a phishing attempt. Then I saw the claim ID. Matched the policy I'd written, clause by clause, blood by blood. There it was, blinking on my screen like a confession. Dear Miss Elkins, the conditions of policy 184 to 9B 775. A countersignature is required to proceed with the current claim filed by Danvers Manufacturing. Without written approval from the designated co-signatory, payout remains suspended under Clause 19F. I read it again, then once more for the poetic spite of it. I wasn't just part of the policy. I was the gate, built the whole damn castle, and forgot the drawbridge was chained to me. The next day, I was in a glass-walled conference room downtown, sipping stale conference center coffee across from a man named William Stamos, lead legal counsel for Halworth. Navy suit, polished Oxfords, the kind of guy who could say indemnity exposure without blinking. He laid out the files with the care of a surgeon prepping for heart surgery. "I'll be blunt," he said, tapping the cover page. "Designed one of the tightest operational liability policies I've ever seen. No claims without sign-off from both an executive and the original risk officer." "That'd be me," he nodded. "You also added compliance verification triggers, which means if they gutted protocol, the coverage is frozen." "Exactly." I leaned back, throat dry. Rage sat in my stomach like a coiled pipe wrench, but I didn't show it. I'd rehearsed this moment for months in my head. The dark, in the silence after every boardroom insult I swallowed like broken glass. But now it wasn't about yelling. It was about leverage. "Can I sign?" I asked. "You could, but you'd be personally liable if you authorized coverage for a non-compliant operation. Given the reports, you'd be opening yourself up to litigation." I let that hang, felt the weight of it shift the air around us. William kept talking, but my brain was already moving. Mapping timelines, thinking names. There was a chessboard on fire back at Danvers, and they'd just realized they fired their only firefighter. When I got home, I didn't sleep. I sat by the window with a legal pad and wrote down every department I knew was running on fumes. Every system Chadwick had reimagined. Every person still inside that place with enough conscience to notice the walls cracking. Then I pulled out an old phone, kind I kept for people I didn't want in my main contacts. I scrolled through the names until I found one I hadn't called in 7 years. Alina Braith, former board chair, retired after cancer treatment. Iron backbone wrapped in pearls. She once told me during a budget fight, "Linda, you're the only person in this company I trust not to let us kill someone by accident." I hit call. She answered on the second ring. "Linda, I'm going to need a favor," I said. "I think you're going to want to hear why." He finally called 3 days after the insurance company looped in legal. Blocked number, of course. I was stirring soup in a frayed hoodie when the phone buzzed. I let it ring twice, then hit record on my second phone and answered with a smile I didn't wear. "Linda, wow, hey, long time." His voice oozed like pancake syrup left out in the sun. "Chadwick." I said it like a curse. I want to start by saying how sorry I am for how things ended. That wasn't, handled right. I've been thinking about you a lot since, everything. Translation. He got caught holding the match with gas on his shoes. I'm sure you have. Right. So he continued, I think we may have had a little paperwork hiccup. Totally understandable. You were so involved in all those policies. God, you were like our safety encyclopedia, huh? I prefer archivist of preventable disaster, but go on. He chuckled nervously. Anyway, we've got 3 employees in the hospital, and frankly, the legal teams are being real sticklers. The insurance won't budge without your signature. Just a quick thing. Formality, really. I let the silence stretch so long I could hear his nerves tap dancing. He tried again. Listen, I know there's no love lost, but this isn't about us. It's about the people who got hurt. I mean, surely you don't want to be the reason they don't get help, right? There it was, the moral blackmail, the veiled threat. Blame dressed as empathy. My favorite brand of corporate cowardice. Chadwick, I said, slow and sweet. Do you remember the boiler labeled B7? He paused. I think so. The one I filed reports on. Twice. Both flagged urgent. Both ignored. Both, let me check, signed off by you after I left, with a smiley face on the PDF annotation. Very professional. Another pause, longer. Linda, let's not escalate. I smiled into the phone. Oh, honey, we passed escalation at the exit drills you canceled. Click. I uploaded the recording. Saved it in 3 different clouds. Then I wrote the email. To Midwestern Division Occupational Safety and Health Administration subject. Incident report. Danvers Manufacturing Explosion Noncompliance Evidence attached body. To whom it may concern. Attached you'll find documentation of multiple ignored safety warnings, internal reports, and direct evidence of cost-cutting decisions that led to the recent explosion at Danvers Manufacturing. Boiler Unit B7 was flagged in 2022 and again in 2023 as critical risk. No action was taken. Additional recordings and internal memos available upon request. I attached the PDFs, the flagged reports, the emails, fake maintenance logs, and the audio file labeled Chadwick Call 1. Then I hit send. Less than 48 hours later, I saw the first headline. Whistleblower alleges safety violations at Danvers plant explosion may have been preventable. By Sunday, journalists were sniffing around. A guy from the Times left a voicemail. A local podcast wanted me on to discuss safety culture. One blog straight up called Chadwick a polyester-suited war criminal. Leaner texted me a simple thumbs-up emoji. Her way of saying game on. The trap was set. And the only thing louder than the ticking clock now was the silence coming from Chadwick's corner. The leak hit like napalm. Someone inside OSHA, God bless him, forwarded the whistleblower report to a local news outlet. Within hours, it went viral. Not big-time CNN viral, but enough to trend regionally. Enough that shareholders started calling. Enough that employees started asking if their lives were worth less than Chadwick's leather chair budget. The report spelled it out in bold font horror. Repeated safety violations. Budget cuts overriding expert recommendations. Non-functional emergency protocols. And right at the bottom, like the twist in a true crime documentary, my name. Former Director of Risk Management, Linda Elkins, filed multiple warnings about Unit B7 prior to termination. Sign-off is legally required to activate the company's accident insurance coverage. That's when things got interesting. Late Thursday night, my inbox pinged with a message from the board secretary. Subject, invitation. Emergency board session insurance clarification request. I didn't respond right away. I stared at it for a good hour, sipping black coffee and weighing every possible outcome. It was a trap or a plea. Either way, they were out of options. And I was the option. I chose my outfit like armor. Charcoal blazer, flat black shoes, the gold pin my mother left me, subtle, elegant, and sharp enough to draw blood. Hair tied back. Documents in a leather folder, corners crisp. I wanted to look like a scalpel. I wanted to feel like vengeance in HR form. The meeting was in the downtown satellite office, boardroom 12. I walked in and silence fell like ash. Chadwick was already there, slumped in a chair with the posture of a man freshly whipped, but still pretending he wasn't bleeding. His tie was gone, his hair a little less styled. He looked like a sales rep who'd been caught stealing staplers. Alina was there too, seated at the head of the table like a queen back from exile. She gave me a subtle nod. Behind her, 5 board members I hadn't seen since the holiday mixer where Chadwick unveiled the efficiency overload campaign and called me safety's biggest fan. I placed my folder on the table and sat. "Thank you for coming, Miss Elkins," one of the directors said. "We're trying to understand the limitations of our current insurance policy. The payout is stalled. That's because it requires something you don't have," I said flatly. "And what's that?" another asked. I slid the folder forward and opened it like a courtroom reveal. Page 19, highlighted, initialed, with a sticky note that read, "Required for activation. Co-signature Director of Risk Management, L. Elkins." The company made a decision to tie all operational liability to the oversight of a single risk management officer, I explained. It was intended as a safeguard, a final check against bad decisions. I looked at Chadwick as I said that. His face twitched. And let's be reasonable, no, I cut in, turning my gaze to the board. Let's be honest. You fired the only person who knew how the machine worked, then rewrote the manual in crayon. And now you want me to clean the blood off the floor. A director cleared his throat. Would you be willing to reconsider in light of the injuries? I tapped the clause again. No signature, I said. No payout. Silence. Kind of stunned stillness where even the HVAC unit sounded afraid to hum. Chadwick opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He looked like a man realizing the ground beneath him wasn't ground at all, but thin ice over deep, cold water. And I had the only key to shore. They tried to stage it like a reconciliation. A sleek room, the smell of polished wood and cheap PR desperation. Cameras tucked in corners, lawyers seated like chess pieces. Chadwick already prepped with a tissue-thin smirk he probably practiced in a mirror during spin class. He looked like a man confident the damage was manageable, containable, that I could be swayed with guilt or ego or a fat enough check. His voice, when it came, was pure weaponized condescension. "Linda," he began, oozing sincerity like it came in a bottle from HR, "we all know mistakes were made." Emotions ran high. But at the end of the day, this isn't about boardroom politics or old grudges. It's about doing what's right for the employees who got hurt, for their families, for the people on that floor who need closure. Don't you agree? He turned to the cameras, gave a solemn nod, then looked back at me. "I think," he said, "that if you still care about this company, really care, you'll sign." And there it was, the pivot from apology to pressure. The sleight of hand where concern becomes coercion. I let the silence hang until it got awkward, until one of the PR people shifted in their seat and a lawyer cleared their throat. Then I reached into my bag, slowly, deliberately. I pulled out my copy of the policy, hardcover binder, tabs marked, corners reinforced with brass. I flipped to the right page, held it up just enough for the cameras to catch the words, "No payout shall proceed without written approval from Linda E. Elkins." I read it out loud, clearly, calmly. I looked straight into the lens and said, "I decline." For a second, no one moved. Then everything exploded. The legal team scrambled like ants under a kicked rock. One lawyer lunged for a folder, another for their phone. A PR rep's face went pale. Two board members began whisper arguing so fast they might have blacked out. And Chadwick, he stood there, blinking like a deer who just figured out the headlights mean death. He opened his mouth to speak. Two security personnel were already approaching from the hallway. "Mr. Trenton," one of the board members said coldly, "you're being relieved of duty pending investigation." His face drained to bone white. "You're kidding." The guard just said, "This way, sir." And then they walked him out. No fanfare, no applause. Just the sound of expensive shoes squeaking across corporate carpet and the faint rustle of a man's empire crumbling in real time. I didn't stay. I closed the binder, stood up, adjusted my blazer. Camera flashes started going off, trying to catch a smile, a tear, anything. They got nothing. My face was unreadable, not vindictive, not smug, just done. But in my hand, tucked beneath the policy binder, was a crisp folder from Kendricks and Harlow Consulting, one of Danvers' biggest competitors. Inside, in clean serif font, was a single line, "Director of Risk Management, offer accepted." I walked through the lobby like it belonged to someone else. Out the doors, into the cold sunlight. Behind me, the building trembled with damage control. Ahead of me, the future didn't need explaining, because I didn't just stop the fire. I became the extinguisher. And this time, I didn't put the flames out. I let the whole damn house burn. Big thanks, you legends of the old office days. Subscribe to keep the switch-flicking chaos alive. Your ex-boss is shaking in their loafers.